Have you ever stopped to think about a better way to use all the computing power that's out there in the world? Well, today we're going to be diving into a project called NuNet, and they have this really radical vision to build what is essentially a single global computer. But let me start by asking you a question. Right now, as you're watching this, how much of your phone or your computer's brain power are you actually using? If you're like pretty much everyone else, the answer is not a whole lot. And that little bit of unused potential, when you multiply it by billions of devices, well, it becomes absolutely massive. Okay, so let's get right into it. Because that wasted potential we just talked about, it's really just a symptom of a much, much bigger problem that NuNet is trying to fix. The fact that right now, all our computing lives in these separate little boxes, or silos. I mean, think about the cloud as we know it today. It's pretty much dominated by a handful of huge companies, right? Amazon, Google, Microsoft. And while their services are incredible, they also create these walled gardens, these proprietary closed-off ecosystems. And what that does is it drives up costs, and it puts up this huge barrier for smaller companies or innovators who want to get their hands on cutting-edge AI. And to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, this whole centralized system is a market worth nearly $60 billion. That is a gigantic amount of value and control that's all concentrated in the hands of just a few players. And that's exactly the kind of setup NuNet is looking to disrupt. So here's the kicker. This whole centralized model, it completely ignores this ocean of untapped computing power that's just sitting there totally idle in all of our personal devices all around the globe. We're talking our laptops, our phones, heck, even our smart refrigerators. It's this enormous distributed resource that's just locked away. All right, so if that's the problem, how do we get at that potential? How do we tear down those silos? Well, this is where we get to the solution that NuNet is proposing, the creation of a totally decentralized computational universe. So what is NuNet, really? At its heart, it's a global framework designed to link all of that sleeping computing power together. You know, the easiest way to think about it is like an Airbnb, but for your computer's resources. It lets literally anyone, from a person with an old laptop to a massive data center, share and even make money from their device's capabilities on a totally open market. And its mission? Well, it's pretty bold. NuNet is trying to smash the barriers between different systems, let computation just flow freely to wherever it's needed, regardless of the physical machine it's on, and at the end of the day, create a truly fair and open marketplace for everything from raw data to super complex AI services. Okay, so who are the people who actually make this whole network go round? Let's take a look at how this all comes together to form a real functioning ecosystem. This is where it gets really interesting. You've basically got four key players. On one side, you have your compute providers, and that could literally be you with your spare laptop, and your data providers. Then on the other side, you've got AI service providers who are bringing their algorithms to the table, and the glue holding it all together, the consumers, the people who actually need some heavy lifting done. It creates this true multi-sided peer-to-peer marketplace. So we know the who, but what about the how? How does the network actually take a request from a consumer, find a provider, and get the job done? Let's pop the hood and look at the core tech. The real magic behind how NuNet works comes down to these things called computational agents. Okay, so imagine them like these tiny, super smart, autonomous digital assistants. You just give them a job to do, and they go out onto the network, find all the right tools and resources, negotiate the terms, and get the job done all by themselves. And this really shows you how that whole process plays out. A consumer just submits a task, defines what they need. Then the network's agents just swarm out and automatically find the absolute best mix of computing power, data, and AI for that specific job. They build a custom workflow on the fly, run the task across a whole bunch of different devices on the network, and then just deliver the result back. It's all completely autonomous. So when you put the two models side by side, the contrast is, well, it's night and day, really. We're moving away from a system that's closed, expensive, and inflexible to one that's totally open, super cost-effective, and built on a foundation of globally shared resources. It's a fundamental shift from a model of scarcity to one of abundance. All right, the big question, how does everybody get paid? Well, the whole network is fueled by its own token, which is called NTX. But here's the really cool part. This is not like your typical crypto mining. With their model of generalized mining, you get rewarded for contributing real, useful, computational work to the network. So you're basically getting paid for renting out your computer's spare cycles. But this project is about so much more than just making computing cheaper. It's really about a fundamental shift in how we relate to our digital tools, and it's a vision for a way more collaborative and open future. This quote from the team, I think it really gets to the very soul of the project. The argument they're making is that the architecture of our digital infrastructure, the very principles we use to build it, is going to have a massive influence on our ability to be creative and solve big problems. An open, decentralized setup could unlock a whole new level of human innovation. And that, right there, is why this really matters. Democratizing access to massive-scale computing could be a total game changer. It could empower researchers, nonprofits, artists, and small startups to tackle incredibly complex problems in science, in climate modeling, in AI, that right now are pretty much only possible for the tech giants to even attempt. So it really leaves us with this one final fascinating thought to chew on. If every single computing device on this planet could be seamlessly woven together into one giant shared resource, what new things could we build? What impossible problems could we finally solve? It's a pretty powerful question to think about.